Welcome back to another episode of the Club Cultivate podcast. Today's guest is a very fun one. While she is my bestie, she was also a request from a previous podster. Miss Megan Silvera suggested that we bring Briley on the pod. So today we have Miss Briley Richard. Very excited to talk about a lot of different things today. And it'll potentially be a little entertaining with a little friendly banter as we know each other very well. So, Briley, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
But we're going to start it off. I'm going to flip this back on Whitney real quick. She had to know there was a curveball coming. I think all of the Club Cultivate podcast listeners need to know a little backstory about the podcast. Whitney talked about this podcast coming to fruition for literally months, if not years. She saw a gap in the creative industry and was like, I would love to just hear conversations of people that are doing incredible things or kind of paving their own pathway. And she made it happen. And it's been going on for a year now? A little over a year. And it's incredible. So I think the people she's had on have been fabulous. And I think she just keeps making it better and better and growing it more and more. So I think this is where the editor should add in the cheers behind it, and we're gonna kudos to Whitney. But anyway, about myself, yes, Briley Richard, nice to meet everyone. So excited to be here on the Club Cultivate podcast. I am originally from Southern Louisiana, which might be why you thought my last name was Richard. So sorry about that if I have dubbed you in the past. Lots of Cajun French names in Southern Louisiana. Grew up about as close to the Gulf of Mexico as you can get, right on that Texas border. And to no surprise, grew up kind of around Botanicus cattle. Specifically, I grew up showing and raising Brahman cattle. And that was kind of my pathway into the ag industry. I think just in general, likewise to the Midwest, you're surrounded by corn and wheat up here. I was surrounded by rice fields and crawfish and hay and sugarcane and things like that all growing up. So definitely grew up in a rural community. Was always interested in agriculture, but I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do with my life. As I got older, I became more and more involved in the breed association side of things through leadership programs and the junior board and things like that. And then also became more and more involved in the 4-H program as well and did lots of public speaking, was on that board as well. So just lots of different elements of communication and things of that sort. And then I realized as I got further into high school that I wanted to find a way to blend those two things together, kind of blend agriculture and communications. At this point in time, I didn't know that there was a formal career path that went along with ag communications, but I would soon find out. I was a part of a leadership program in the Brahman Association that went around 2 different land-grant universities. I know many different breed associations do a very similar thing where they have kind of a leadership camp over the summer. They have it at different land-grant universities to kind of expose those students to the different opportunities. And the first one I went to was actually at Texas A&M University. And we had shown a lot in Texas. I already knew I liked the land and kind of the area, but that's where I kind of really fell in love with Texas A&M. So that was the summer of my junior year. So that's where I learned about ag communications as a degree path and kind of set my sights on that at Texas A&M. I had no idea how I was going to execute this plan, but I was going to figure it out one way or another. So go into my senior year, I applied for A&M, got waitlisted, and was like, okay, it'll be fine. Well, about halfway through my senior year, I still hadn't heard anything back. And my mom was like, girlfriend, you got to find a different contingency plan in case this doesn't work out. I know it's your dream, but it may not happen, So I had actually applied at LSU. And fun fact about me, big LSU fan, go Tigers always. I had applied to LSU, got accepted, had several scholarships, had a roommate. We hadn't signed a lease quite yet, but we were getting into the spring semester of my senior year. And I was starting to get pretty nervous, coming to the realization that maybe I'm not going to get accepted at A&M. So I was kind of making those plans to go to LSU. And I believe it was April when I got accepted into A&M. So finally heard back from them, was super excited and was I don't know, just crumbled the LSU plan up and threw it away and was like, well, I'll still cheer for you, but just from a little further away. So went to A&M, was there for 3 years, got my undergrad in ag communications, and we can speak on that later, but really loved the education that I got there and the professors that I had and the things I learned. And then from there, I went on to work at the American Angus Association for a while, whereas actually I met Whitney and we became coworkers. Poor girl, I say all the time now that we're friends, I don't know how she didn't literally block my phone number because the amount of questions I would ask her whenever I first started working there were absurd. Poor thing. I had all kinds of questions about all the things. That was a post-COVID lifestyle. I was a COVID graduate, so first dip into the corporate world or the job world. From there, I did a brief stint at a advertising agency before deciding to go freelance on my own. So now I reside right outside of Wichita, Kansas, and I own my own communications business. So that's the path.
Well, that was long because you didn't need to say anything about the business stuff or the cultivate stuff. That's very kind of you. Appreciate that. I think you and Peyton were probably annoyed of me talking about it.
No, you answered the question. There were many.
Yeah. So I wanted to have this conversation with Briley for a long time because the funny part, I don't know, the ironic part, is that we usually have all these conversations a lot, just like every day. So hopefully this is like tangible, good things to talk about, but also just a peek inside like what it's like to be friends with two ag communicators that only talk about work.
I like to be inside our heads. Jokes.
Maybe you don't want to know after this conversation.
I don't want to know that.
Okay, let's go into a little bit about school because, well, we won't judge too much for being an Aggie. I know that you loved your writing classes down there and even shared some writing courses information with me when I was at Angus. So talk a little bit about what that degree path looked like. Are you glad you did it? Is there anything you would have done differently? And maybe some of the like highlights, because from what I've heard, I think A&M's Ag Comm program is different than like an OSU or Texas Tech. So you want to speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I'll say probably first and foremost, I was pretty naive to, again, I didn't even know ag communications existed until I did that tour of A&M through the Brahman Association. So I didn't even know that there were other ag programs at OSU and at Texas Tech and K-State and things like that, and amongst the other colleges as well. But I have come to learn now that I know people who have kind of been in that same degree path at different universities. I believe A&M's, at least at the time that I was there, is a little more writing focused. We do have a touch point of, I think, all of the other elements. There was a social media class, and there was kind of more statistical side if you wanted to get in more of the research side of things. There was a graphic design class, and we were required to take all of those courses as well. But the writing ones, I think, were probably like the big ones that were required and that were really important that you grasp those things. And I've spoken about this to anyone that'll listen, quite frankly, because I never shut up. I mean, writing is just so important, whether you're going to end up talking to people or writing like interviewing and writing articles, or if you're just sending an email, like you want to put your best foot forward and sound as eloquent as possible, or as at least put together as possible whenever you're proposing an idea or just having a conversation with someone. So I would say A&M's writing classes were fabulous. I had two wonderful writing teachers. I had more of like a technical hard news type writing teacher, Dr. Leggett, and then more of a feature story style class with Dr. Redwine. And both of those human beings in general are just fabulous people. I still very much reference the notebooks that I had from college. They're a little ragged now that I've moved a handful of times. But yeah, I think everything that I learned while at A&M, specifically from the writing style and like learning those foundational elements of like the rules and regulations in the AP style and all of those things that come with writing so that you have that foundation before you kind of find your style or kind of the path what kind of writer you're going to be specifically, I think was so important for me to gain while at A&M.
I don't know if anyone else out there has the friend that's like, hey, you misspelled that, or there's a grammatical error when you post something to social media or whatnot. Like I realized my email I sent you this morning was not the best. That is my friend Briley. I know it all comes from the depths of her heart.
Yeah, because if I wrote something incorrectly, I would want someone to tell me. I would never let my friends look dumb on the public interweb. So I'm like, hey girl, you used the wrong 2 year. Just wanted to let you know you wanted to edit that, by the way.
I love you for it. It's like
and I feel to myself, I'm not the perfect speller by any means.
It's like one of those friends don't let friends
Friends
misuse.
don't let friends look dumb. Friends don't let friends look dumb.
Okay, so if you were to list out a couple like musts when it comes to like some of the rules, like I always think back to learning about passive versus active verbs. Is that the right thing? Yeah.
Yeah, we were taught I don't remember if it was an assignment or all throughout the course, but we were not allowed to use passive verbs. We only could use active verbs. And one, it's like a very much a good exercise in stretching your imagination and coming up with different, usually clearer ways to say things. But that's a big one, active verbs. But I would also say that, and I was listening to Megan's podcast as well, there are times where you can break the rules. Like these aren't rules that are required, they're set in stone, you can't bend them, can't break them. But for the most part, your writing will be better if you're using active verbs. I also remember the term or the word that should hardly ever be used. A lot of times it can be interchanged for which or some other word that better describes what you're saying. That is just a lazy word. Very is a lazy word. Just these worthless filler words that are bringing your word count up. And whenever you're trying to tell a really concise story and you only have, I say, 500 words to use, all of these little details can really add up. I'm trying to think of, you probably remember rules I had for you more than I remember the rules I set.
Commas. What about commas?
Yeah, it all depends. That's what I've kind of learned, I guess, the older I get and the different jobs I have or the different clients I work with. Some people want an Oxford comma, some people don't. You just kind of have to go with the style of whatever client you're working with.
Moral of the story, you always need a friend that will help you sound better and smarter. So that is Briley. And even if you don't ever want to write, I think your point earlier about like you use it way more. I didn't ever intend to be in this position, but the more I write captions and like I know there's a whole conversation of AI and whatnot, like I think it'd make life easier if you knew what you were doing. So it's my PSA and Briley's PSA to learn how to write. But you talked a little bit about writing. Let's touch on you going freelance and then we can dive into what you offer. What was that conversation? What did that look like? When did you feel like you were ready? Let's talk about the tipping point.
Yeah, so I had tried out agency life. I didn't know what it would be like by any means. I feel like in the industry you hear about, oh, there's like agency, corporate, and then more like role-based kind of smaller businesses. Not that the American Angus Association is a small business by any means, but definitely wasn't as corporate as what I got myself into with the agency. And while I learned a lot, I realized that kind of being in an office setting where, you know, trips to different places or conventions or events were fewer and farther in between than I was used to. I realized that really wasn't for me, and I was missing out on a lot of just life events that I wanted to be a part of, whether that was livestock shows with cattle and friends, or that was being able to go visit when I had a new niece or nephew born. Like my family isn't nearby, so that was like a different pose challenge for me rather than maybe some other people. But I realized that there were things that I was more interested in that I wasn't able to kind of flex those muscles within the job position that I was in at the agency. So I wanted more life flexibility and kind of more job description flexibility to be able to do a bunch of different things. So I realized, and I also should add, my mother, wonderful note from my mother. She had always told me, like, after probably even going into college, like you get the nervous jitters before you move away and go to college, go off to college, and you're away from your family. And not that I was particularly nervous, but she's always just said, like, you can do anything for a year. So whenever I moved to the Midwest for my job at Angus, my mom was like, and if you hate it, you can move home after a year. And whenever I got the agency job and I was nervous about that, she was like, and if you hate it, you can apply for a new job after a year. You can do anything for a year. But that's a good gauge of if you're really going to like something past like just the newness of it. So I had been there for a year and I was like, yeah, still not necessarily thinking this is right for me. So I had a lot of conversations with my family and Whitney, of course, because I can't make a life decision without consulting Whitney, and realized that I would have the work to be able to go freelance full time and would be able to kind of cover my bills and things like that. And Whitney probably went about it a little more wisely than I did, or a little wiser than I did. Yeah, you were like, well, I'm sure I can make the same salary that I'm making based off my client work. And I was just like, I think I can do it. It'll be fine.
I don't even know how many clients. I don't think I had a client though lined up besides like portrait shoots.
Had weddings and things. I was just winging it. I mean, like, logistically, like, it was like a logical version of winging it, but I was winging it nonetheless. So, yeah, I went freelance full time. And in the beginning, yeah, it's harder than it is now. You just had to figure out a bunch of different things. Again, you're granted this freedom that you've never had. You've been to the office from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And now you've got like, you're setting your own to do list, you're setting your own schedule, which is good and bad. You're like, oh my gosh, if I do nothing all day, I did nothing all day, but also I got no work done. So, kind of have to hold yourself accountable in a different way. But yeah, that's how I made the leap to go freelance.
I think you have to have a little bit of logic, but I also think now looking back, like there has to be a little bit of faith or like just I'll figure it out if I'm going to do it because there's no way to have it completely set up or you'd never do it.
Yeah, I think so. Probably like there has to be a little bit of just like blind optimism, like it's going to work out because again, you have no option. If it doesn't work out, then you're not paying your bills. So, and I didn't have anything to fall back on. I mean, I had a small savings account that I knew could get me along the way if things got really rocky, but I was hoping to not have to tap into that. So, yeah, I think if you're on the fence, definitely have conversations and be realistic about if you think you can do it, but know that it's not good. You're not going to feel ready whenever it's time to do it.
Was there anything that you set in your mind to like if it doesn't go well after a year or if I don't make X or have X number, like did you have a contingency plan or were you solely like I'm just going to figure this out?
Not a legit one. I guess I just always thought that if I really felt far back, I remember growing up, I always thought if I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be, I would just be a teacher. And I was like, well, if I can't figure this thing out, then by all means, I'll just be a teacher, I guess, or something. And we live right down the road from an elementary school. So I was like, surely they're hiring. I don't know. I just always felt like if it didn't work out, I would find either someone local to where I was living or go back into industry some way, somehow. And at that point, I probably wouldn't have been so far removed that it would be a huge red flag. I would just say, like, I tried the freelance thing and I wanted more structure or something like that.
Yeah, I
Didn't
feel like
really,
that was,
I guess, is the good answer.
well, I guess I remember thinking something like if I can't figure this out in a year, I'd go back. But I also, once I was in it, I didn't think it'd be as scary to go back. I have no intention of ever working for anyone else. But now that I'm here, I'm also like, I guess I tried it. Like, I used to think that it would be scary to go back to a job and say, hey, you failed at trying to start your own business. But now I'm like, honestly, I just think freelance, like small business owners, freelance entrepreneurs, like, if you like it, it's great for some people and it is terrible for other people.
That is probably true. I do think you probably need to take a pulse check on yourself and do some digging and come to terms with if you really are the type of person that would do well in that type of environment where you have to be really accountable to yourself and really on top of your time management and things like that, which isn't to say that you're going to be the most flawless, organized, perfect to the letter every day. But I mean, if you have that style of personality or not.
Now, having done this for a little while, are you 2 years fully on your own?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I believe it would be 2 years in August.
It was right after the fair. Okay, now that you worked at associations, agency, and freelance, I guess, are you glad you did things in that order? Knowing that I think there's a lot more kids trying to go full time on their own right out of school. What are your thoughts and opinions on that? Any hot takes?
I don't know that they're hot takes, but I have recommended, I've been in a couple different conversations recently with like college junior seniors, just kind of randomly, about kind of my job and how I feel about freelance and what have you. I have recommended, I think, to all of them that they get an office job of some sort, or at least have an office job internship while they're in college. I think learning to get feedback from other people and like the amount of things I learned within that like 1 to 4 years that I was out of college before I went freelance, literally immeasurable. You have like peer reviews. You're learning from your peers. You're learning from your like higher level people who are giving you like recommendations and mentoring. And then having that new mentorship where there are a lot of times, even now in my career where I'm freelancing, you don't really have anyone to bounce ideas off of. You don't have anyone to tell you, like, here's the direction you need to go with this, or here's like, it's just you and the client. And if you're in like a creative rut, you've got nowhere to run to. Like, you kind of just got to dig yourself out of it. So I think that learning from an organization and the institutional knowledge and the people that are going to be there right out of college is really important. I also think that's where you gain a lot of those like time management skills and project management skills and being able to kind of change course of direction on a project because some random recommendation comes in from a higher level or something. I just think like all of the different facets that you have to be able to like juggle while you're in an office type job right out of college is really valuable. That's not to say there aren't people that are completely ready and are completely capable of going freelance right out of college. I think that's totally doable. And there are some definite rock stars that I have no doubt that they're going to succeed. But if you're on the fence about whether you should get an office job before going freelance, I would highly recommend it.
It also makes me think about, which we talk about this a lot, like it is so hard to make friends when you are in, I don't want to say like small town America, because I don't live in that small of a town in Manhattan. But like there's not a lot of people my age doing similar things and like put in social settings. So if you never go into the office, like how much we spent a lot of time, whether we were going to be friends outside of work, we still spend so much time together, especially in ag jobs, traveling and shoots and I mean all the things. Like you don't work just 8 to 5, so if you don't have that component, you miss out on friendships.
Two things. One, yes, like had I gone freelance right after college, I would be in Texas and I wouldn't know the majority of the people that are staples in my life. Not that good nor bad, but like you're just exposed to so many more people. And then also, like there are so many client opportunities that you're going to miss out on because you wouldn't have met people through your business. Like, if you really think about it, and I never thought about it this way till right now either, but like, those are prospective, not necessarily taking clients from a business, but like, those are prospective clients for a different type of work when you go freelance because you've now met them. Like, there have been tons of jobs where someone that I met while at NCBA, while I worked at Angus, is like, hey, I heard you went freelance. We need a freelancer to do a graphic for XYZ or whatever it is, or a sale ad or something like that, that I would have never even met had it not been through working at Angus or the people that I was friends with because I worked at Angus. So you're also broadening your network by having a job somewhere where there are people that are going to connect you with people.
Trying to think about, there's so many things I want to talk about, which this is like a normal conversation where we start on one thing and then end 72 different layers deeper.
It's like pinball all the time.
Let's talk about what is it like to be on your own now. You mentioned it earlier, but like managing the project with just you and the client, like when you're having creative issues or review issues or Adobe issues, like good, bad, or indifferent. How are you working through that when you're now on your own?
Let me tell you, if I get one more scratch this full on Adobe alert, I'm going to lose my mind. That is my current not fun project that I'm working through. But I think to go back just a little bit, whenever I went freelance, I did not have a set like business proposal of like these are the services I will be offering. I right, wrong, or indifferent was pretty open about keeping it open to any different style of communication. So whether that was someone that needed social media work, I had done a lot of social media work at that point, so I felt confident in being able to offer that service. I had done tons of photography at that point too, so I felt confident in that service. But I loved to write, but I didn't know how that was really going to fit into my business, and it has just kind of naturally evolved into some writing opportunities as well. So I didn't have like a set plan in place. It just kind of came to me, which I think is probably not a bad thing. Like I have clients reach out to me and they'll say, "Hey, I need this." And you kind of work on that basis for a while and then they find out that I do graphic design or something else and they're like, "Oh, we'd love if you also took on our socials." Which has been a real blessing for me. I now have a smaller group of clients that I do more things for, which I think is really helpful so that I feel like I know their business a lot better and can make all the different facets that I'm touching better because I have a better understanding. Whereas if I was just doing sale photos, taking them and leaving them, my touch point would be much smaller with them. But because I help out with their social and I do their graphics and whatever else it may entail, I have a much better one, relationship with the client, and two, understanding of their business as a whole.
What about when it comes to reviewing your work? Or like, what do you do? She doesn't want to answer.
I should shout out Taylor, my fiance, poor guy. He is my copy editor. He is my graphic design suggester. He is like my first line of defense for everything. Whitney and I talk about it on occasion. Like, when you go freelance, there's no one to double check if you said entries are in tires. Like, it's just you because we know Adobe's not going to catch it. So, like, you've got to have either a lot of self confidence, which I probably don't acquire. I mean, I probably don't have as much, or really good people in your corner, which I am thankful I do have that. There are a lot of times I'll send, like, if I'm really stumped on something creatively, I'll send it to Whitney or our friend Peyton, who also worked with us at Angus, and I'm like, I've got nothing left in my brain to offer this project. Can you please help? And thankfully, they're so gracious as to help. But like with writing stories, you get down this rabbit hole and it sounds great to you, but you've worked on it for hours and hours on end at that point. So maybe it doesn't really make that much sense and you need someone else to read it. So I definitely have people that I send projects to whenever I feel like I need a little support or a little guidance and say like, hey, can you point me in a different direction? Or maybe just a direction I'm not thinking of. Like it may not be that this is wrong, but I haven't even thought of something else because you need that other creative mindset coming from someone else. I don't really have anything else to add. I don't like the review process.
It makes me think that there's also good and bad with, because I use Peyton for a lot of things too, but he doesn't know the like creative components of things. But it is very nice to have someone who doesn't think about that. Like sometimes he just watches a video and is like, I'm like, this hit the mark to make you feel sad or good? Or like, what's the end goal of this story? Do you get the takeaway? So that's
That
kind of
is a
nice.
great point. Like, and almost the difference between things that I would send to you versus Taylor. Like, whenever I show Taylor something, it's almost like a mock client review. Like, he's the client and he's going to look at it from like a non-creative perspective and say, this makes the impact that it needs to, whether it's writing, design, photography, whatever it is. And I send to you and I'm like, does this gradient look silly? Or is XY, like, should it be center aligned or left aligned? What do you think would be more impactful from those perspectives? Where Taylor would be like, I don't know and I don't care. So I think having maybe those two different perspectives is really valuable too. And I think that goes back to why working in an office setting is so valuable because you learn all of these different perspectives and things to look out for that if it was just coming from your brain may not even think in that way. But if you train yourself to think in that way by being around others that do, then you have a whole different mindset when you do go freelance and you think of all these things that would have not even been a thought for you.
It makes me think back to when we used to, like, if you were dealing with a problem, we could just be like, hey, I'm stuck on this because you're sitting next to each other, or even like, remote, whatever. But now I get to the end of the project, send a draft, and I have to hope they like it or not, because if not, I'm starting from the beginning. Or like you don't get to show a client at 50% and be like, do you at least like see the vision? Do I need to start over? Like that has definitely been a struggle for me. And I know we've talked about that.
I'll say that like going freelance has increased my self-confidence in my work by a ton, I would say. And also like forced me to get outside of my comfort zone in like specifically design aspects. I'm like, okay, I can't, though I have a specific design style, I can't just be providing all of my clients the exact same, almost carbon copy, same type of graphic. I need to be, tailoring it to them. Maybe what's the theme of the sale or what's the theme of the ad or what are we trying to promote here or something like that. Whereas if I just kind of stuck to my style, they would all look cookie cutter. And I don't know that that would be serving my clients to the best of my ability.
So how do you develop, or what's your thoughts on having like a style, but not creating the same thing?
I think it's normal for someone to like a designer to have a certain style or a writer to have a certain style. And I think that that is probably why, like, I work with clients regularly, year after year, project after project, and they know my style beforehand. And if they want a different style, they could go reach out. I could either point them in a different direction, and I have before. Like someone has explained or proposed a project to me, and I say, I could help you with this for sure. But here are two different people that I think this would be like right up their alley to design something like that and help you through that project. And yeah, maybe you might be risking the income from that type of project, but you have to probably be real with yourself if that's something you can handle or if that's something that you think you're the best fit for. But I think having a certain style is valuable so your clients know what they're getting into ahead of time and they can decide before they even reach out if they'd like to work with you or not. But remembering that each client is unique, they're telling a different story, they have a different business proposal, they're trying to get something else out of it than their friend down the road and tailoring it to them. I would say it needs to be more unique than just branding colors. Like we can't be using the exact same fonts over and over again, the same assets over and over again. There is value in uniqueness and telling their story through whatever many different elements you can incorporate.
You just brought up something that I think is really hard. I guess I don't really do a great job of it still. How long did it take you to figure out that it might be worth it to point clients in other directions or say no to projects?
Not super long because I don't do a ton of video, honestly. Because a lot of clients would want like video and social, and I would be like, totally. Here's the level of video that I feel confident in providing as a service to you. Totally feel comfortable with the social media side. But here are some people that do both, so you would only have one point of contact. I try to, I guess, put myself in their shoes. Would I want to be reaching out to 7 different people to try to make a social post, or would I rather just have a one-stop shop? So, is it possible I lost business because of that? Sure. But I also didn't have to feel even more self conscious whenever I was working on a project of being like, am I capable of this? Is it going to look the way they want? Yada, yada, yada. If I take on projects that I know I feel confident in my ability to create and execute, then I think my work is just better all around. Can I wipe my nose? I could make a flood.
Allergies are really
Well,
bad.
I also don't know if you want to talk about like the difference in the things you say yes and no to when you first go freelance versus after. I don't know if that'll come in like when we talk about money.
Well, I think it's part of the same conversation though of like, I guess I can design a few social graphics if I have a client that needs something. But if I need a whole magazine or an entire campaign or honestly probably like a logo package, I'm going to send that to someone else. So I guess you just have to do enough of those to figure out what, or maybe where's the line of like, I can do it, but I'm not great at it versus, like, because I can do things, but they're not good. Does that make sense?
It's also a time element though. Like how much time is it going to take me to complete this versus how much time it would take whoever down the road that's significantly more talented in this area and that is their like primary skill set. So are they not the better person to point them to just so I can use my time for other client projects or things like that?
Yeah, I definitely think that going in on your own, you realize the things that you can do versus what others can do, knowing that there's tons of other freelancers or other contract people. Like, you don't have to do everything to please everyone to run a business.
I've even told some people like, and I try to phrase it this way whenever I am like turning down a project, I guess. Like, here are a list of other people who would be fabulous and like truly knock it out of the park. If you talk to them and they are out of your budget, you don't feel like it's a right fit or whatever the element might be, reach back out to me and we can have a bigger discussion about if you want to move forward and it is a project I need to take on because that's fine too. And that does happen sometimes too, but passing on that work to someone that's like an expert in that skill set, I don't think will ever be bad for you.
Have you ever thought, though, about just contracting that out yourself?
Never mind. That
Okay.
seems like a lot of admin, Whitney.
Well, okay, so that's part of the reason that I think, like, I wanted to have you speak on freelancing And maybe this can like just kind of wrap up like pros and cons of freelancing with a few more specific questions to follow. But I want to grow a business. I want to like, I mean, I'm not saying like this giant massive company, but I knew when I went out, I wanted to like be very forward facing, advertise. Like I put myself on social media, whether I like it or not. And you have built just a really solid business with a lot of word of mouth and a lot of like networking. And so you've gotten to a place where you like have these core clients. And so I think we do a lot of similar things, but have like a totally different perspective on what we're trying to do. And I guess, is that because you know what you want in life, or I guess walk us through some of like your process or how you've kind of ended up where you're wanting to be with the business you built.
I don't like change and I don't like uncertainty. And I think that working with primary clients over a longer period of time helps to provide more certainty and a less opportunity for change in a freelance role. I don't know that I intended to do that whenever I went out on my own, and it just more has kind of been a natural evolution of my business. But yeah, I've got pretty core clients that I work with either kind of on a seasonal basis if they've got livestock, or just a regular, like all throughout the year type thing on regular projects that are recurring either monthly or yearly or things like that. It makes me feel a lot more secure with income, things like that. That's a way to kind of lock down a more steady income that you know is going to come in at least more regularly than just project based. And again, kind of knowing and learning a business to be able to better tell their story. I think the longer you work with someone, the more you learn their specific styles, the things that they do and don't like, the kind of timeline based too. Like some people want to see a project at 80% just to kind of get a vibe of what's going on, and some people don't want it until it is completely packaged. Like they don't want any input at all in the project. So I've really enjoyed working with my clients, and my core clients that I have all been word of mouth or networking. I posted a little bit like the first year that I went freelance on my personal page. I never made a business page. I don't have a business page. I have a website. I built it myself. Thank goodness I didn't pay anyone to build it because I don't ever drive to it. It just kind of exists in case someone were to ever ask about it. But everything else has been word of mouth. And I think that that is kind of the beauty of our industry, is those networking connections are so important and can get you jobs and can get you projects and can get you more and more people to work with. So yeah, I would say ideally for me, I would like to work with a set number of clients over a long period of time for like several years.
Also, your website's great. What? Go ahead.
I was just saying, and growing with them. Like there are some clients that I took on like literally right after I quit my job, and they were and I was very transparent with them. Like, hey, I haven't flexed some of these muscles and these skill sets in a very long time. If you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you. And my prices reflected that at that time too. But like we have grown together, like their businesses have flourished, and my business has, and become a better provider for them too. Like my skill sets have grown too. So I think that's a really unique element of it too.
I just thought back to you being a provider and baking sourdough. So that was it.
My sourdough's dead though, because I haven't been home enough to keep it alive. So Winnie and I truly traded places. The first year you were freelance, I was like, she's going to literally dig her own grave. I don't know how she is running ragged like this. And I was like, here, dear, here's some bread, one more Temmie, and then my last
Now I'm concerned about you.
Are you okay? Here's some bread. I don't know why we can't think of anything besides yeast to make ourselves feel better, but I guess it's not yeast, is it? Is it?
Yeah. Well, the sourdough is there's no added yeast.
The starter, right? We can cut this out. I don't know anything about. I made a jam up sourdough bread for a while, and I made some good pizza. I don't know the science behind it, though. Don't ask me questions. I don't know any science, really.
I just love, though, that like when you've been through a season of like either yours is definitely like just continue to grow and grow. You're like snowballed, but I feel like when you have been through a tough season, not even like hard in terms of work or clients, but like nose to the grindstone, you just come out on the other side and you have a whole new appreciation for the people that have done that.
100%.
Full send.
When I pass this on, that person that gets to go nose to the grindstone just learns so much and experiences so much, and I'll be cheering from the sideline with a full 8 hours of rest. Not there yet.
What is sleep sometimes? Okay, let's talk about two fun things I know you're waiting on the edge of your seat for. Let's first talk about finance. I should just put a PSA because you got to do this to me earlier. Briley called me and she said, we should not talk about anything about finance. But that is the point of the podcast. It is to talk about uncomfortable things, and not saying that you need to share any of your numbers or anything, but like I mentioned earlier on the phone, I'm still learning out things while on the phone this morning with a tax person. So what was your mindset around pricing? Like, how did you organize things 2 years ago versus now?
I'm sorry, I tried really hard to hold that in. Oh my God.
She's trying to die before she talks about her finances.
Seriously, I'd rather pass away. I think holding it in had an adverse reaction. You're gonna have to start that from the top.
Yeah. Well, I can still use all
I
my stuff.
literally died.
You were risen back from the dead.
Whew.
That a wall of water. Okay, let's.
Koalas now that fit into a cup holder. I'm
I
so
can't
tired of
with
the
these
evolution of water bottles. I can
Yeah.
only spend $40 so many times.
I just don't need that many either. Like, I use them for a couple days, wash them. Maybe you're supposed to use a new one every day, but I don't. Maybe that's
Who
gross.
has the cabinet space for that? You should include this. This is important PSAs. Hot take. Bottles are dumb. Why can't we have non-spill, fits in a cup holder, 40 ounces?
Non-tox.
Let's start with those three, and then we'll get to non-tox.
Okay, let's talk about, for procrastinating. Talk about finance. What was your thought process? And let's just be real and honest here. When you had to send your first proposal as a freelancer, what was going on up here? That's in the brain for those that can't see this visually.
Between these 2 years. Still, I'm not confident in pricing. I would think that when I first went out on my own, though, I was 100% just concerned of making a paycheck to pay my bills. I knew the set amount that what my bills would cost each month. And I was like, okay, sister, if nothing else, you got to make this much. So pricing projects at that point, and some clients were like, I have X amount of dollars to spend on this, kind of take it or leave it. And usually those were a reasonable amount too. But when you have to, someone's like, I want you to run my socials. How much is that going to be? I don't know. In agency world, I wasn't involved in those conversations. Those were like much larger RFPs that had a much bigger scope than just social media. So I was completely naive as to what things should cost. And then I can't place the blame on anyone else because I don't list my prices really of much of anything on my website either. But there's not a guide. I looked on YouTube, I looked on Google. If there a corner of the Facebook, I looked everywhere. If there was a corner of the internet that the pricing could have been found, I was looking because I love reassurance and I couldn't find it anywhere. So you just kind of have to send it and have conversations with people. And again, I would go back to Whitney and Taylor and I was like, okay, Taylor, would you pay this much for someone to run your socials monthly? And he would say yes or no. And sometimes Whitney would say yes and Taylor would say no. And I was like, okay, so I need to come down maybe a little bit. Oh, here's my ballpark. Taylor would say I would spend X and Whitney would say I would spend Y. And I'm like, okay, what's the middle number that probably makes more sense? But at the beginning, I had a lot more time on my hands. So I was like, well, I need the work. The dollar amount makes sense, at least to me at the time. And not that now, a lot of those prices still haven't changed much. But I was like, well, I need the money and I need the project. And this seems like good work and good clients. So if everything else was a fit, and the money made sense, then I took it. But now I would say I probably factor in a lot of other things. Recently, I had someone reach out to me about going picture. They needed one animal pictured. And I was like, I would love to work with you on a broader scale than just this. But you're 4 states away. And that doesn't maybe make the most sense when here are 4 other contact information for 4 other very talented people in the area that are driving distance to picture this one bull. Now, if you've got, 100 head next year, please reach out. But if not, that's okay. I didn't need to spend the 2-day trip out there to be able to go do that just to make the buck. Which I think is also the beauty of having like standing clients. Like, I know when my next paycheck is coming. I don't have to take everything that's thrown at me. But yeah, the income thing is really scary because whenever you go freelance, I guess in my perspective, I didn't have outside help coming in from anywhere. I had my savings account that I had built up over the years, and that was it. And there were some months that were harder than others. Some you were like, okay, we're not going to TJ Maxx and becoming a Maxxinista this month. We're going to have to hold out. I'm buying some new clothes for a little while because that's not our priority. Our priority is our car note that's coming at the first of the month. But I think on the other hand, something to talk about is when you get an influx of income too, because, when you have an employer, that paycheck's coming every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever the schedule is. But when you're freelance, sometimes clients don't pay you until all at one time, or you don't invoice until all at one time. Like, I don't like to invoice when I'm on the road because I'm not like focused and making sure like I'm remembering all the elements of the project. So I prefer to invoice when I'm at home and kind of bulk do it. Well, that also means your money's coming in bulk. So you may now have 2 to 3 months salary that comes in at once, and you need to make sure you're allocating it properly and not thinking that you have more money than you do because, well, next month's going to be a little slower than this month was, and you're going to need that money. Like, it's not a set salary every month. There's a lot more fluctuation, and you need to be preparing and making the right decisions and moving the money where it needs to be so that it's in a place to be used when the time comes.
So do you just have like one personal account that everything runs through? Or do you funnel everything into one business account and then pay yourself?
Yeah, so I talked to a financial advisor thanks to Whitney Whitaker Dahmer. She put me in contact with Nikki Morgan, and she is a financial advisor based down in Texas, right? And I have referred her to a couple other people as well, but she kind of helped me set up the flow of income for my business accounts. So I essentially kept my same business, all right, I kept my same words. I have a personal checking account and a personal savings account, which I have had since I opened a bank account, and I kept those accounts. I now also have a business checking account and a business savings account. So when I get a check in the mail or however it comes through, I deposit that into my business checking account. And then if there's reimbursements involved, I put those wherever they need. If I put that on a credit card for points, I take those out immediately, put those on to pay off their credit card. And then I calculate whatever percentage needs to be taken out for taxes. And then that goes into my business savings account. And that is where my quarterly taxes come from. That is where my payment for my CPA every year comes from. And that account does not get touched unless it is for taxes or my CPA, who does my taxes. So everything else, as far as moving, like just everyday life and bills and things like that, I move it from my business checking account to my personal checking account and then pay my bills from there.
What do you have to say about your CPA? Because I know like when you first got him, that was a big conversation. And I had gone through a few, but you really like your guy now, don't you? I guess.
Yeah, I really
is there,
lucked out.
but is there anything you wish you would have known for taxes or anything that'd be good to share?
Definitely think about your taxes before the tax year of submission. I was just trying to tread water whenever I went freelance. So I went freelance in August, and then I think it was February, I was like, taxes?
What are
No.
those?
So literally I had to like sit there and go through my bank statements and like take out what was a business expense. It was awful. Granted, there are lots of sophisticated ways and unsophisticated ways to keep track of your business accounting things. I personally just keep receipts and I log those. I have paper receipts. If they aren't available on paper, I print them out so that I have them all in one place. And I go at the end of every month and I log all of that information and track it accordingly to what my CPA, like the categories my CPA has outlined. I would say first things first, find a CPA the minute you go freelance, or at least start looking for one, because I didn't know how long the process was going to take either. I thought like everyone was a CPA. I was like, everyone's in finance. What do you mean no one can do my taxes? So yeah, we get to February and I'm like asking for word of mouth because I was living in I had just moved out to Kansas. So I'm asking everyone around here that I know, all like 3 people. And they were like, nope, don't know anyone. So then I'm just Googling. And that was hard too. Basically, for as much as I love Google, Google really did not help me a whole ton whenever I first went freelance. But I'm just Googling CPAs. And then I also, at that point, I didn't know how much the average CPA costs. I didn't know what kind of ballpark number I should be looking to spend with them. And you could ask people, but like their business maybe aren't set up the same way as yours. A lot of people that I asked that were freelancers, they were like, I just go through, like my parents have a CPA for the farm and I just do mine through them. Well, that wasn't going to work for me. So I randomly found this guy that's like a town over. Chad, my savior, was wonderful last year. We had a meeting after like we finished doing my taxes and we went over a couple of things just so he could explain them to me and like went over like, here's the way I think you should like, he said I had categorized them for the most part correctly, but like here's a couple tweaks of how to do them better next year. And now we have like a working relationship and now it's fabulous and I could literally kiss the ground he walks on because I really lucked out by finding him. So look for a CPA before it is tax season. Highest recommendation.
We love Chad. She
We
always talks
love
about
it.
Chad. Okay,
I don't
the
know.
other thing, you don't?
I think it's Cowan. Cohen. I know his office. I know his office is. I
He's
know
doing,
Nancy at the front desk.
I would just say that like having those people help makes such a big difference because I guess I haven't run into any issues, but someone told me one time like with their sales tax. I know I brought on my bookkeeper as one of like the first few episodes because it is like so confusing. But once you find the right people, you're like, you were meant to be in my life. It's like a relationship.
Also, like, you don't have to have the same logging or like admin of your expenses as someone else does. Like, take Whitney and I as example. Whitney does a lot more like contract based sales, like where like sales tax come into play. I don't have as much of that of an issue, but I have a ton of expenses for all of these things that kind of categorize in different ways. So, and I also have probably a little bit different base. And I don't know if you run into this, I guess, but some of my clients take reimbursements out of the paycheck and some of them keep them in. And talk to your CPA about this before you ask the little old me. I'm not the person you should be taking recommendations from. But there's like different ways you have to categorize that income if it was taken, like if it was separated in the check versus if it was all just one lump sum. Like then you need to report your expenses differently. So that's been a nuanced thing I've had to figure out this year too.
Yeah, that is a good point because it's not true income and you don't want to be taxed on it.
Well, yeah, like if they report, I think I understand this right. If they report like if they separate your reimbursements versus your income, then you cannot report your reimbursements. But if they pull them all together and just send you one lump sum check, then your reimbursements count as an expense. Make sense?
Tracking, but
You can
I
cut
have
that
mine
out.
as a line item on my invoices. So then my bookkeeper knows to pull that out of the payment. And then I don't know.
You
But
can cut that whole part off if you so please, because I don't know if that's facts or not. And
no,
I
I
don't
guess
know, but for me,
I think it's a good thing. It made me think of like what's all the ads that it's like consult a medical professional.
consult a medical provider before should consult your doctor before you choose to take 3 gummy vitamins versus 2. And I'm like, yeah, but my doctor would say it's okay.
Moral of the story, find professionals, pay them.
Most creatives are not tax professionals. Most farmers aren't tax professionals, but guess what? Someone is. Go find them.
It is nice when you find a tax person that understands the ag industry though. So like that can also like the creative world. And because I remember I had one that was like, you do studio photography. And I was like, no, I don't have props. Some people do. So anyways, okay. We could chat and grab our one thing I did want to ask before we wrap up. Let's talk about travel and managing work while traveling and pros and cons of traveling. Like there's a whole bucket we could go down on this, but it is you and I and a lot of people that probably listen to this, like we travel a lot for work unless your job is your home area because of the way like the ag industry is set up. And so it is something that's so fun and so draining. So I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to you to share just some high level things, and then I might ask from there.
Yeah, when we talk about pros and cons, I feel like travel is both a pro and a con, depending on the time of year or just depending on what's going on with life. Travel was a huge aspect of why I loved my job at Angus and maybe didn't love my job as much at the agency. And is currently it's part of the reason sometimes I love being a freelancer and sometimes where I'm like, can I just get a nap? That would be wonderful. Think that the pro of it is that you get to see so many different parts of the country and even the world with some projects. You get to see how people do different things in different areas of the country, the scenery, the landscaping, the weather, literally all sorts of elements that you're exposed to. And just like, I think just natural exposure is so important in just humanity of the way I do it is not the end all be all of anything. Like there are so many, what do they say? There are a million ways to skin a cat. And people are doing it all different ways all across the country, making it their like living. And it's wonderful to see how that is conducted across the country and whatnot. And of course, I mean, a lot of what Winnie and I do too is livestock shows, and those are spread out. All the majors are across the country too. But the con of that is you spend a lot of time in different time zones. Fun fact about me, I think the Central Time Zone is the best dang time zone Jesus ever created, and I hate being in any of the other ones. And I violently and passionately will say that with my whole chest. But you're dealing with time zones and you're still communicating with clients that are on the East Coast while you're on the West Coast and making sure you're managing that. And gosh, the other day I had this issue. I was trying to schedule some meetings while I was in Colorado. And like when I got back into Central Time Zone, I was like, I don't know if my Google Calendar is correct or not because I'm really like, it was trying to correct some things for me and move. I don't know. It's just a lot to be had, and the amount of time you spend on planes, and then also creating buffer times when it comes to traveling on a plane because of delays and things of that nature. And in general, just being home. I don't know if that's just something that comes as you get older or if my trends have just changed, but there is something to be said about spending time in your own home with your family and in your own bed and in your own kitchen and eating. Again, Whitney and I have talked about the lifestyle of being on the road as far as, you know, eating habits and things like that and wanting to be an active person. And if you're someone who likes routine, travel is hard. It is very difficult on every aspect of your life if that's not something you're used to, or even if it is something you're used to. So it can definitely be a con. I think kind of if we go back to how we talked about saying yes and no to different clients, though I don't say no that often, I guess, because my travel schedule is insane. You can maybe kind of plan around that. Like, okay, I'm really hoping I can have a good block of work at home these 2 weeks. I'm going to say no to things that put me more than 5 hours away from home during that time frame. And sometimes they just kind of line up and you can't help it. And those times aren't very fun. But that's just life, is what I've found. Like, there's just going to be some times that are more uncomfortable than others. January, I literally spent like 7 days at home. They were not consecutive. And it was really hard. But May, I get to spend most of the month at home. So it also might depend on kind of your seasonal work too.
Yeah, and there's something to be said to maybe plan if you want to see your significant other or not. Like there's that.
That's a whole nother element. Yeah. I guess I would say too, that could be a factor as well. Taylor travels a lot for work as well. And we end up in a lot of the same events that I'm working for either a client or what have you. And he's also there with his judging team. And Whitney lives the exact same life that I do. So she has the same thing with Dahmer. But it is nice that like, I don't feel like it is very rare that one of us is at home and we're not getting to spend quality time because the other is on the road. We're usually both gone. Or at the very least, if the other is gone, we are both very understanding because we live a very similar lifestyle when it comes to travel. But I mean, Whitney and I have had these conversations a ton of times of like, what does the business look like whenever you want to have a family, and how does it have to change? Because as the mother, you can't spend that much time away, or like, does pregnancy limit you even more, and things like that. So those are scarier conversations probably, but they're realistic. That is a thought you have to have if you're a woman that's going to be a freelancer and want to have a family. How will that affect you? What kind of mother will you want to be? Do you want to be one that's there for every single basketball game and every play and t-ball game and whatever it is? Or are you willing to kind of sacrifice some of that so that you can be on the road too and still making your living?
I definitely think that, well, when you're getting your feet wet and out on your own, like that's probably not a thought. It's like just survival. But the more that I've done this, and I feel like we both have been thinking about this, like you own your business. So like, what are the things that you can do to set yourself up for what you want? Like, don't pigeonhole yourself to where you built this business where you're 90% on the road when, maybe you offer different services or you work with someone else or like, I guess I think while scary conversations for sure, it's realistic. And I guess that's the beauty of owning your own business. So take
What
advantage
did
of
you
it.
say? Women of our age have to think about
Us old ladies.
us old brides. Yeah, I mean, those are real conversations we have about how does our business have to change so that, I mean, and there's the true element of like you are the mother, you do have to birth the child. So you are an integral factor of that. And that puts you out of commission, at least for a short stint of time.
Especially with two husbands that are on the road all the time. Soon to be
Exactly.
husband. And we don't live near family either.
Correct. Both Whitney and I are Kansas transplants. Shout out
Yeah.
to
So fun stuff. I also think there's a time and a place, but I guess it's maybe something I would have wanted to know more about. Or it's just something you experience for the time being, and then life has to change it. And it doesn't have to change. I think what you said was like very well put. Like you just have to pick, I guess, what you want. So
only certain elements of your business have to change, but you will inevitably have to pick which elements it is.
okay, for a fun surprise. Well, I didn't fully surprise Briley because I told her this morning
I don't
about
like
it, but
surprises. I don't like change.
we established that. Briley doesn't listen to podcasts. She only listens to the toast. And I was not familiar with the toast until Briley and my friend Jenna shared a little bit about it. I have listened to it very briefly, but Briley and I have had conversations of where like we could just be the toasters of our industry or like just essentially so we could talk every day. But they do this.
I don't think I'm as cool as them, but
Well, they're pop culture. I know nothing about pop culture. So at one point, Riley was like, well, this is what we'll do. Do you remember we were talking about this? She's like, I will tell you everything and then you just respond.
yeah. Which
But I don't know.
this might have a little bit of element of that. So this may be a taste for the listeners.
So, anyways, I thought it would be fun to throw in a toast segment called Queenies and Weenies. And Riley's going to take it over from here.
Okay, so the Toast has a weekly segment called Queenie and Weenie. They do it on their Friday episode, and they just pick a Queenie and a Weenie for the week. It's a 7-day title, so you can be a Weenie one week and a Queenie the next. I don't believe anyone has ever made that jump so quickly, but it's possible. Anything is possible. And it's just someone who has exhibited Queenie-like behavior and someone who's exhibited Weenie-like behavior. Whitney, would you prefer to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I can go first. So,
do you want to do Weenie, Weenie, Queenie, Queenie?
yes. Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Weenie first?
Yeah, let's get the bad out of the way first. End on a good note.
Okay. Mine is ChatGPT
Period.
because she's getting up there on the anger level. Multiple reasons, right? Like not even with AI. I'm not sure if I'm broken, like I figured out with my scrolling on Facebook recently. I've had some technical issues with Facebook, but my ChatGPT on my computer will not load. I type in everything and I have to refresh the page like 2 or 3 times. And I even pay for a pro account. And I've switched over to Claude, but I haven't invested my life into Claude like I had with Chat. And so
deep, dark personal secrets.
everything besides you. So right now, I am just in a feud with ChatGPT, which everyone keeps talking about Claude. So I'm like, maybe chat's in the behind already.
I was in a conversation recently about like just AI in general and where it's evolving to and how you're going to have to pay to use it. Like they got everyone hooked by making it free, but it will slowly become more and more like pay to play situation. So that's actually quite interesting. Maybe they're starting to take the turn on you and they're going to be like, oh, Whitney, you'll have to load me 4 times unless you want to pay $20 a month.
Or
Then
we'll have to
I'll
get a data center out here in Manhattan, Kansas, in order for it to faster.
have to like ruin your farming and your community to be able to have chat tell you if it's effect or effect. But
I need that.
it's very valid.
Yeah. Okay. Yours.
My weenie, we're gonna throw in some pop culture, is the folks who attended the Met Gala and did not participate in the theme. It wasn't that hard. Like, quite literally, it was, what was it? Fashion is art. You could have done darn near anything. You could have had a watercolor looking organza fabric and you could have called it art. But instead, you came in a prom looking dress. I could have come in a prom looking dress. And it's not money. Like, there's no barrier to entry there. It's surely not that there's no brand that wanted to work with you. Like, if you were invited by a brand, surely they would have wanted. So you didn't give them a good concept because you're not creative. I don't know what the reason is, but I think that if you have all this money and all this time and you're famous, play with the theme. Let's have fun. Life is boring enough.
Except the sand outfit was too much.
Was that Sabine something something?
Oh, it was Heidi
Sabine.
Klum. She was like,
Oh, hers was
no, the like white
was
matte.
bad. Emma Chamberlain's was really good. I'm trying to think of who else was really good. Oh my gosh, Kendall Jenner's was really good with the wings, but she didn't pull the wings out until she got inside. So there's no pictures on the carpet. So I guess that's another thing. Like if you're gonna go all out, girl. Show us everything. Don't wait till you're in with the billionaires. Let us poor people see the cool stuff.
Let Getty Images get that.
Yeah, Getty. Let Getty Images get that. Exactly. Thank you.
That's funny. Okay, do you want to go first for the Queenie?
My Queenie of the week is more than one person, technically. It is all of the mailmen that have been delivering packages to my house round the clock. I've got Amazon drivers here on a Sunday, which I don't support people working on the Lord's Day necessarily. But man, Amazon, USPS, his name is Mark. We're besties. Like, I'm in the throes of wedding planning and I am adding to cart far too much.
We should have added that. Not only are we working away, but Briley's planning a wedding for July.
That's why I'm
So
working away because I'm planning a wedding. So yeah, I appreciate the mail service people and I hope that they're enjoying this beautiful weather and they're not frigid in their mail trucks. And yeah, I hope they're safe and sound. I hope they sleep good at night.
well, that is a great one. They
Thank
make
you.
the world go round, you know? Okay. Mine is kind of random, but I have told you about her and I just read another newsletter from her. Her name is, I didn't know what to do with these, and I
Okay.
didn't want to go pop culture because I think this is,
Cool.
yeah, it's good. She makes the world go round too. Her name is Jen Olmsted. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but she is the creator of Tonic, which are website templates for Show It. I think most of them are for Show It. There might be some others, but she is a phenomenal writer, storyteller. Did you ever read the newsletter that I forwarded you?
On self-help. I'm really bad about it.
No, it's not self-help.
It's writing. That's my job.
But the writing is so funny. Let me just,
I do love to laugh. You know, that's a fact. You
okay,
sent one
okay.
to me. I just didn't read it.
Let me just, I feel like I'm not prepared for this, but I'm gonna share. She says, this is the email we just got. Welp, Whitney, we finally did it. After an extensive drought, we finally had an IG post go viral. And of course, it was the only one that involved the least planning, effort, and content related to what we actually do. It just keeps going. She shares some of it, and it was just so good. And she does it one weekly newsletter, and somehow at the end, she always relates it back to the thing she's selling, which I think in marketing or like what we're trying to do is essentially like sell a message or a concept or whatnot. And she does it in such a great way that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to buy the website template because she's so good. So if you don't follow Tonic, which their sites are, or their templates are beautiful, you should, but you should also sign up for her newsletter. I'll even link it in the show notes.
Lincoln.
Just for you
Your
guys.
favorite book?
Yes. So that's my 2 wrap-up questions. Okay, so we love to ask 2 wrap-up questions. First one, which we already know the answer to the podcast question, but are there any book recommendations you would provide to our listeners?
Yes, there is. Though I read a lot more last year than I have this year whilst in the wedding planning situation. My book of 2025 was Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. Fabulous. It was about like Chinese medicine. I don't even know the period, but several 100 years ago. Maybe even more than that. Hold on.
I'll link it.
It was just like a beautiful story. And I'm not like rah rah ree women are me, but it was like this beautiful story of like women in culture and Chinese culture at that time period. And it was beautiful. I don't know. I was hooked. That was like my favorite book of last year. And I read it, I think, in February. So like she held her title strong.
Well, I have to get a book for the honeymoon. Oh, I'm gonna go to the library next week.
You've read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. We already know that one's a great. Secret Lives of Marjorie Post, another. It had to be realistic fiction. Some of those were fake, but like Post cereals, you know what I'm talking about? Like General Mills, like the people who make like Cheerios and stuff. It's about like the heiress to that before early 1900s. I don't know. One of the kids the other day, they were like, she was born in the 1900s. And I was like, as was I. She was like, no, 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 no. 1800s, 1800s. And I was like, okay,
That's
fine. I'm also a 1900s model.
Okay, last question for you. What is any advice that you would give to a younger Briley or a younger creative or anyone out there trying to figure it out?
We didn't touch on this, but I think it is important of making sure you're not honing in so much on one single skill set that you limit yourself from other things. I through college and even through like the beginning of stages of my career did not consider myself a graphic designer, and I still don't consider myself a graphic designer per se, but having that skill set in your toolkit and something that you can pull out should someone need it is so valuable. Even if you just, if a friend down the road how many times have I said down the road? My gosh. Even if just like a local friend of yours needed something really quick and you were able to help them out, I think like you will never like regret being able to do multiple things. And I would say like my graphic design skills have improved tremendously even in the past 2 years of me going freelance, just because I knew enough about it that I could say yes. And then the more projects I've worked on, the better it's gotten. And I'd say the same for probably every other skill set too. But don't think like, okay, for myself, for example, if I had gotten out of college and said, I love writing, I want to be a writer, that's all I'm going to do, I would have pigeonholed myself so much that like virtually none of the experiences that I had would have been possible for me. But because I said I primarily really enjoy writing and it's my greatest skill set, but here are other things that I'm capable of, and I continue to at least try to do other things I'm capable of, even if it's in a small setting, I'm still capable of those things. Whereas the fewer you do it and the longer you let time go by without doing something, the harder it is to do that again. So just whip up a graphic, even if it never goes to print or never goes or is posted anywhere. Just keep flexing those muscles so you have that in your toolkit to use at any point in time. And I think that's especially important for those kids in college that are like, I just want to be a graphic designer. And it's like, hold your horses. That could be something you do. And that is great. But again, just like we said at the very start of the podcast, like you'll still have to send an email. You'll still probably want to give input on client projects that have to do with graphic design or something else. So just remember to not have tunnel vision too much with one specific segment of ad communications to where you can't leave yourself open to other opportunities.
I think that is a great way to end, because I was also just thinking like, okay, that's interesting. But then I think about all the things that I even do as a business owner. Like I would say video is like primary, but I offer photo and video because a lot of times that needs to go together. And then there's this element of social, or even, I don't write, but everything like capture.
Like video is probably a great example. I don't, whenever I list out what the deliverables I'm going to have for a project, if I'm going on a photo shoot, I'm not saying I'm going to come back with photos, but I will try to get B-roll, and I can get B-roll. So like, and sometimes I put something together that's really small and say like, here's an added element of like that I think would be good to use here, or just have it in your arsenal to be able to use down the road for a client. Whereas if I just said, I don't do video, I'm not ever gonna flip the switch and turn on the video portion of my camera, then I'm literally like this whole other proposed project couldn't even be possible because I just never pushed myself to do it.
Well, this has been so fun. We could talk forever, but we'd have to do another part 2. So we'll see what the people think. Thank you, Briley, so much for being on the podcast. It was such a pleasure to visit with you today.
The pleasure's all mine, Wit.